Let's go side by side here with these two polls that both came out today. We stick in the CAA. Towson in both polls as well, 18 and 19. Syracuse, a team with a ton of hype with the addition of transfers Chase Scanlon. They're sitting at 8 and 7 in the two polls. But notice the strength overall, the ACC. All 5 teams are in the top 11 in the country in both the preseason polls. So we make our way over here. We welcome in our analyst, Davey. This is such a good time of year because it means we're close to real college lacrosse
finally
coming back. And we got discrepancy among the top 2 here. Who's your number 1?
UVA all the way.
Why?
I'm a big believer in that you can't make them second. They're the champions, right?
Yeah, but it's not the same team.
I understand that, but until someone knocks them off their throne, they can't be taken off. And I mean, obviously Penn State, I think, is going to be a very good team. They're right up there as well. But looking a little bit deeper into it, I think guys like Matt Moore are going to even be better than they were the year before. They have an experienced goalie who ended up being the MVP of the entire tournament. That is something that can't be underestimated. I know the defense might be a little bit young. That's
very young.
Where we're going, but I think those parts, along with the experience they gained last season, makes them deserving of the number 1 spot.
Yeah,
number 1.
Last year I was a little questionable about Yale being number 1 after they lost Ben Reeves, and I thought it was kind of, obviously they had won the championship, but you lose a tour time winner. Right. It's kind of tough to say, oh, that team's number 1 again. Virginia, I don't think lost the equivalent of that, so I sort of side with Davey here in terms of Virginia and bringing a lot of that back and a lot of that depth, I think, offensively back.
Yes.
And I think that's really important. I know we know Penn State. You got Grant Ament. You got Mac O'Keefe. Yeah, his name escaped me for a second. And those guys are 2 of the best in the country. But at the same time, Virginia, the way they play so well together, I think is really important. And the same group coming back for the most part, on offense at least, and that depth in the midfield too. I like what they have going, and I think that's an important thing in terms of the cohesion they had last year.
Virginia is a great team. I think you cannot underestimate what Ryan Conrad meant to that Virginia team.
Yeah, big blue guy. Yeah.
We saw and did little things that I don't think enough people took recognition of, because he's not putting up 50, 60, 70 points. He's doing the little things. He's playing wings on ground balls. He's playing a little bit of defense. He's the transition guy.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I think that will be an impact. And the freshmen, Virginia played this entire fall with 3 freshmen as starting close defense. Now, they're really good players. You got guys who are in the U.S. U19 team, whatever, but that's a lot of youth to be going up against the teams that they're going to go up against in the ACC. We got 5 teams in the ACC in the top 11 in the country. That's going to be super competitive. So at some point, whether Virginia is number 1 or Penn State's number 1, somebody's going to slip up. I think these 2 are going to be some of those top teams all year long. Penn State's my number 1 team because of the Ament factor, because you bring back the best player in the country right now. I think that's a pretty easy argument to make that Grant Ament is one of the best players in the country. I think they have more experience on defense, which makes me feel good. And then I think you chalk up the goalie and face-off, if you're looking at Virginia versus Penn State, to pretty even. Between Colby Knies and Alex Rode, I kind of give that a toss-up depending on what the day is, because both have been relatively streaky at times. I think Gerard Arceri's a really good face-off guy, just like with Petey LaSala. You have a face-off guy who's competitive. I think they're kind of even. So I think overall, they're really even. I give a slight edge on the defense experience-wise to Penn State. Now, these freshmen for Virginia could turn out to be stellar because they went up against some good competition at the Fall Classic, and they were pretty good. But the experience level for Penn State gives me a little bit of edge to the Nittany Lions.
And I think that's a huge factor when we're talking about this. And we talked a little bit about it before of that experience from UVA winning the whole thing, and then the reaction to what happened to Penn State in the tournament last year, where they spent so much effort and were so excited to be there in the moment, and then
got dump trucked.
Walked on the field down 8 all of a sudden, and everything sort of went out the window. But I think the test will be this entire year, right? These are teams that we all are saying we imagine are going to be there at the end. So it's the experiences and trials that you go through as a group moving forward that I think are going to be the answers. And is that UVA defense going to play beyond their years, or is Penn State going to develop that just sort of killer mindset? And then if they get a chance in the playoffs again, they're not going to let it go down.
Outside of those top 2 teams, or top 1 team, I guess, if you to count them both. Syracuse not being in the top 5 really stuck out to me. That's the thing that was stuck out to me the most out of this. Behind Notre Dame there in the ACC, which I thought was interesting. You bring in a guy like Chase Scanlon, and you get Tucker Dordevic back and healthy all at the same time, building on sort of what you had last year with some of those. Syracuse was a sort of a fun team, I think, at times last year, streaky at times too.
Streaky.
And fell to Loyola in the tournament, and you got Pat Spencer and Nick Mellon, and those two going up against each other. I think that's really going to be good for Mellon at the end of the day. So I think that Syracuse has the experience and now even more talent coming back this year to belong in that top 5. And you got to say you got to take somebody out. I'd probably take Duke out of the U.S. lacrosse poll and Penn out of the top 5 in the Inside Lacrosse poll in that.
So much of Syracuse, and it's crazy to say, but you look at the teams that are above Syracuse in both these polls. They're teams that have gotten it done more recently than Syracuse.
Yep. Yeah.
And all the tradition in the world can't buy you what have you done for me lately.
That's right.
And I think in so many ways for Syracuse, despite all the talent, because you add Chase Scanlon, you bring Tucker Dordevic back, that midfield may be, we talk about Virginia's midfield, Syracuse's midfield might be the deepest in the entire country with all the different pieces. So deep, they may have to take a first-team All-American or an All-American in Chase Scanlon and move him to attack because they have so many options there. But what can you do it for me once we get to the prime time, once you get into the season? That's the biggest question with Syracuse, because you're right. If you look at a talent alone, I probably think they are a top 5 team.
Probably the most talented Syracuse team we've seen of some time. In a few years, right?
I agree. I mean, and we were doing the sort of preseason All-Americans on this show the past couple of weeks, and I was, sort of made me notice how many Syracuse guys kept popping up and who we
Don't forget about Drake Porter in goal too.
Yeah, and he's got some experience as well. And I think Syracuse overall, with getting Chase Scanlon in, is obviously they need to, prove what can you do for me now. But I think they're itching to get back to that sort of old school Syracuse. Let's get up and down the field. Let's run and gun with teams, and let's blow them out of our own building, which I think they have a real possibility of doing this spring.
And don't forget, when you look at the ACC, North Carolina is ranked 11th, and they're the worst team in the ACC.
Too into that. Yeah.
They added a first-team All-American attackman.
That's right. And we talked about Will Bowen too, as someone as defender who was the top ranked.
Another guy who could be an All-American candidate.
Absolutely. And I think the same argument or same excuse used for Syracuse is sort of what have you done for me lately? And, North Carolina, exciting, got a lot of new pieces, but now it's up to getting it done and making some noise in the ACC and eventually the national championship.
Finally, a team that we don't see here that stuck out the most to me is Princeton. A guy with Michael Sowers on that team. They do bring back a couple of his cohorts from last year. You lose the offensive guy, the guru, and Pat March to Syracuse, of course, but I guess I got to feel like this is it for Michael Sowers. I mean, no respect here in the top 20 for both polls, and probably hoping to finish on a high note, right?
I would think so too. I think Princeton's going to make some noise. Just when you have a talent like him, you're going to win some games that you're not expected to, and I think that'll certainly happen. I don't know if they have the complete roster up and down to consistently put out that type of high performance. And you mentioned having a new offensive coach, a new system, but Sowers will be sort of the Band-Aid that covers up for a lot, and they're going to win some games.
They got a lot of competition in the Ivy League, though. You got 3 teams here in the top 12. When you look at Cornell coming in there at number 12. Princeton, if you count these 3 teams, then there's one spot for everybody else in that Ivy League tournament. Slim margins.
Princeton gets a couple wins over some of these teams, maybe a Cornell or something. They're moving up in that poll, too.
Yeah, Cornell's another interesting team. I know we sort of disagree a little bit on Cornell and how far they're going to go, but, Jeff Teat, I think is locked and loaded, and that coaching staff knows what they're doing.
I think Cornell's in a similar position to Princeton this year, with Jeff Teat as their guy trying to maybe get his senior season and finish it the right way.
A little more respect showing for Cornell.
Exactly.
Which is why it's interesting.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks, Davey.
You got it.